Okay, boys and girls, today we're going to review the quadratic formula. And for this, you're going to need to take notes on a separate sheet of paper. So most of you may recall the quadratic formula from Math 1, Math 2. And the quadratic formula is used to solve a quadratic equation. So the formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4a over 2. Then your equation has to be in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So if it's not in that form, the first thing you need to do is to put it in that form. Okay? So here's what we do. We're given a quadratic equation. Some of these could be solved by factoring as well, but the quadratic formula works on everything. So the first thing we need to do is identify a, b, and c. So a in this case is 3, b is negative 5, and c is negative 8. So we have a, b, and c. So the coefficient of n squared is a, the coefficient of n is b, and the constant is c. So now, once we have this and it's equal to 0, we're going to put it in the quadratic formula. So negative, and we're going to write that as negative 5 plus or minus b squared. Now what I would suggest you do is you put that negative 5 in parentheses and square it, minus 4 times 3 times negative 8 all over 2a. 2 times 3. Okay? Now, I suggest that you do not use put the square root in the equation. Okay, so when you're putting this in your calculator, you don't want to put the square root. You just want to put this part without the square root, this part in your calculator. So I'm going to do negative 5, which is 5. And remember, x is equal to this. Plus or minus, and I'm going to put we call this the discriminant. So I'm going to put just the discriminant in my calculator. So I get 25 minus 4 times 3 times negative 8. I'm putting just that in my calculator, and I get the square root of 121 over 2 times 3 is 6. So you may recall when we did the difference of two squares that 121 is a perfect square. So the square root of 121 is 11. So we get x is equal to 5 plus 11 over 6, or 5 minus 11 over 6. So remember, you want to add these together first. So 5 and 11 is 16. So you get 16 divided by 6, which is 8/3. 5 minus 11 is negative 6, so that'll be negative 8/3 and negative 1. These are our two answers to the equation. If we were to graph these in Desmos, we would see that the graph would cross the x-axis at negative 1 and it would cross at 8/3. Okay, let's do another one. So again, we want to find a, b, and c. So here a is 2, b is 5, and c is negative 9. It's already equal to 0, so we didn't have to change anything there. So we're going to have negative 5 plus or minus parenthesis 5 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 9 all over 2 times 4. So that is negative 5 plus or minus the square root. So got 5 squared again, so that's 25 minus 4 times 2 times negative 9. Remember, we're only putting the discriminant into the calculator. We're not putting the radical. So we're putting just this part in the calculator to get an answer, and that is 97 over 8. Now, the reason we don't put everything into the calculator is because sometimes your answer could be written in radical form. So there are two ways we can write our answer. We can write the exact answer. So the exact answer will have the radical in it. So our exact answer would be negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 97 over 8. Let me erase that and write that again, because we need to see that this is two different answers. So this is negative 5 plus square root of 97 over 8, or negative 5 minus the square root of 97 over 8. So those are our exact answers because they have radicals in them. Now sometimes they ask us to approximate the radical, to approximate the answer. And when we approximate the answer, that's when we take the square root. So to approximate this, I'm going to use my handy dandy calculator, and I'm going to do negative 5 plus the square root of 97. I'm going to press enter and then divide by 8. And now I get an approximate answer of 0.606. And then I'm going to do the same thing again, but this time I'm going to do negative 5 minus the square root of 97. I'm going to press enter and then hit divided by 8. And that is negative 1.86. Generally, I'm okay with going to to 2 places behind the decimal. So let's just say in this class we're going to round to 2 places behind the decimal, unless told otherwise. Okay, so that's how we find our answers. We want to be able to give an exact answer and an approximate answer. So let's do the next one. A is 6, B is negative 12, and C is 1. So we have negative b, so that's negative 12, plus or minus the square root. Again, I would put negative 12 in parentheses, minus 4 times 6 times 1, all over 2 times 6. So negative 12 becomes positive 12, plus or minus. Remember, you're going to put your radical. You are not going to put the radical in the calculator. You're just going to draw your, write your radical. And then this is going to be, we're going to find the determinant. 144 minus 4 times 6 times 1. I did that wrong. 144 minus 24. So that's the square root of 120 over 12. So once again, our exact answer is 12 plus the square root of 120 over 12, or 12 minus the square root of 120 over 12. It is two different answers. Our approximate answer is where we actually take the square root. So our approximate answer would be 12 plus the square root of 120. I did that all wrong. I put 10. 12 plus the square root of 120. Press enter, and then divide it by 12. I'm on a struggle bus with my calculator, guys, so bear with me. I wish I could show you what I'm putting into the calculator. So my approximate answer is going to be 1.91, or 0.87. Okay? All right, make sure you're getting the same answers on your calculator, because it's putting this in your calculator is probably the most difficult part of this. And so I just want to remind you, we're just putting this in our calculator first to get the 120, and then we're taking the square root of that. Okay, let's do another example. And we have A is equal to 6, B is equal to 12, and C is equal to negative 15. Oh, notice that this is not equal to 0. I didn't pay attention to that. So I got to get it to equal to 0 first. So the first thing I have to do is add 10 to both sides. So I'm going to add that to the constant. So I get 6k squared plus 12k minus 5 is now equal to 0. Now it's in standard form. Now I can find A, B, and C. You're right, A and B would not have changed, but C is the only one that would have changed if I hadn't done it correctly. All right, so this is going to give me negative 12 plus or minus the square root of 12 squared minus 4 times 6 times negative 5 all over 2 times 6. So I get negative 12 plus or minus. Remember, I'm only going to put in what's inside the radical. I am not putting the radical in the calculator just yet. I'm just putting in this part in the calculator. So that is 144 minus 4 times 6 times negative 5. 264. So the square root of 264 over 24. I can't multiply tonight. Over 12. Okay? So once again, I would do my exact answer is negative 12 plus the square root of 264 over 12, or negative 12 minus the square root of 264 over 12. And of course, we can also get an approximate answer by actually finding what that square root is. So that would be negative 12 plus the square root of 264 enter divided by 12. Now, if I were to graph this on Desmos, I would get these approximate answers as well. So if you want to check your answers, you can check them on Desmos, and you should see the same thing. As a matter of fact, I'll go check them when I'm done, just to make sure I'm not teaching the wrong thing. And then this one is 2.3, negative 2.35. So once again, you want to make sure that you can do these on your calculator. You can put this in, okay? So now we're going to add 3 to both sides because we have to get a set equal to 0. So we get 6k squared plus 2k plus 12 equals 0. So A is 6, B is 2, and C is 12. So we have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 6 times 12. Now when we do this, we're going to get an imaginary answer. And that's all going to be over 12. 2 times 6. Alrighty? So we get, I think we get negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, and when you put this in the calculator, I think it gives you a negative number. 4 minus 4 times 6 times 12. You get a negative 284. Now, because it's negative, it has what we call a imaginary solution. So if you were to graph this on the calculator, it will never cross the x-axis because it has an imaginary solution. So the way we solve this is we have to recall, and I'm not sure where you saw this, but you have to recall that the square root of -1 is I. So we're going to take out an I from this, and we're going to write it as -2 plus or minus I, the square root of 284 over 12. And we're just going to leave it like that. We're not going to do anything else with that. Okay? And finally, the last one, we have to put this in standard form. So when we move the 2v over, it goes in the middle because it has to be in standard form. So it has to be v squared, then v, then your constant. So in this case, we have a is equal to 6, b is equal to 2, and c is equal to 3. And yes, for this one, we're going to just leave it like this because technically there is no approximate answer because it's imaginary. So this becomes -2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared. This one's going to be imaginary as well. 2 squared minus 4 times 6 times 3. I didn't intend to give you 2 of these that were imaginary. But this is -2 plus or minus. And again, and see also if you put this, if you try to do this by putting the square root, it's going to give you an error. It won't let you do it. So it gives a -68 over 12. So once again, we're just going to write this as -2 plus or minus I, square root of 68 over 12. And that's our answer. And of course, this means -2 plus I, 68 over 12, and -2 minus I, 68 over 12. Okie dokie. All right, boys and girls, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to go to the next page. You have 4 problems. I want to see you do those 4 problems, so pause the video, do those 4 problems, and then come back and I will show you the answers. Okay, welcome back. Here are the answers. So make sure you are writing these down in your notes. And because the first one had just whole numbers, there is no approximate answer. You just have an exact answer. Okay? All righty. That's it for today. There is an exit ticket on Delta Math for you to do.